I thought I hit the button. Live transcription, I hope, has also been activated. Yes, I see it has been. And if you want it to be activated on your own device, please push the live transcript or CC button. Everyone's audio and video has been turned off except for our two panelists. Please use the chat button to communicate with each other and the Q&A button to ask questions. We will deal with everyone's questions at the end of the webinar. Now, to introduce Elder Doreen. Known as grandmother to many, Doreen Spence is a Cree elder who was born and raised on the Good Fish Lake Reservation. She is also a member of the Saddle Lake Band, as her father was from Saddle Lake. Grandmother Doreen is retired after having spent over 40 years nursing in active treatment hospitals. Currently, she is an active elder in residence with the Cummings School of Medicine's Indigenous, Local, and Global Health Office. And, if that's not keeping her busy, mentors students and staff in the Alberta Indigenous Mentorship and Health Innovation Network and at Mount Royal and St. Mary's Universities. Healing and wellness are her lifelong legacy, and she is honored to have recognized by so many for doing what she is so passionate about. She has received an honorary Bachelor of Nursing from Mount Royal University, received the Inspire Award, the Alberta Centennial Medal, the Alberta Human Rights Award, the Chief David Crowchild Memorial Award, and the YWCA Woman of Distinction Award. And she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. This year, she was appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada for her teachings of unconditional love and reconciliation, and was granted an honorary Doctor of Law from Mount Royal University. Pretty impressive, I would say. So welcome, Doreen. Cam's bio. Cam Stewart has been active in the field of diversity, inclusion, and human rights for over 20 years. He has received several awards for his work, including Jewish Repairing the World Award, YMCA Peace Medal, Baha'i Community Racial Harmony Award, the Alberta Outstanding Contribution to Community Adult Learning Award. He has been honored with the Eagle Feather from Elder Doreen Spence and has been gifted a Blackfoot name of Mikoshut Pinukum, or Red Morning, by Herman, Yellow Old Woman. I do apologize if I mispronounce that, Doreen. Under his leadership and guidance, the Calgary Police Service received the Calgary Immigrant AIDS Society Immigrant of Distinction Corporate Diversity Award and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Diversity Award. He has advised hundreds of corporations, nonprofit organizations, and all orders of government in developing equitable practices and removing barriers for all people. Cam is presently the Education and Engagement Consultant for Alberta Human Rights Commission, President of the Alberta Hate Crimes Committee, the Rotary District 5360 Indigenous Relations Committee Chair, and sits on the District 5360 board. I don't know what he does in his spare time. He is a member of the Calgary East Club and a Paul Harris Fellow. Welcome, Cam, and welcome, Doreen, and I look forward to hearing your message. So take it away, please.
Hi.
Thank you, Rick. I wanted to thank everyone for being here. It's always a pleasure to be here with life learners, and I wanted to start this session in a good way. So I wanted to introduce my elder, my friend, my mentor, Elder Doreen Spence, just to start us in a good way.
Hi. Thank you, Cam. It's such an honor to be with you all here this evening. It warms my heart to be able to share a little bit of who we are, what we do in the community to build relationships and work with peace and reconciliation My sacred name is Pascustagon Kiheo Isquio Unekaneo, bald eagle woman who leads. And I was sharing some smudge with you. There's 4 sacred herbs in here to represent the 4 different directions. And I always smudge to make sure that I'm coming from a good space, that there's no distractions or negative energy. And so anyway, I want to share my smudge with you all. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Cam, for the good work and leading us in a good way. And I'm going to leave it up to you after I open up with prayer. Hauksina Siwatsian Ninanaskum Nanaskami Giskak Nuhtauinan Tbagdaunan Minan Masquatsuan Minan Nisuan Tmagnauge Kahiao no Akumaganak Wisto Aukois Miopaitsi Ixinota. Great Spirit, to the original source of all that exists, the divine essence, the original source. I come before you with a humble heart to give you gratitude for this opportunity to come together in a good way. I just pray that you'll open our hearts and our minds to ways of coming together. It was predicted long time ago that our people would come to a point where the humanity would be brought to its knees, and we would have to rethink our values and where we are going in the future. And that was during the time of COVID. Now it's post-COVID, and we just ask for blessings and guidance to lead us forward. It is the time where humanity must come together with one heart, one mind, and one spirit to lead us forward in a good way, to bring peace and harmony to all that is upon the planet, our 4-legged, our winged ones, our standing people, our tree people, and all the relatives out there, to the tiniest insects. I pray that you'll just bless each one in the circle today, and may we have an amazing evening together. Hi, hi, all my relations.
All my relations. Thank you, grandmother. It's great to have you here, and I've got another tin of tobacco for you. Just so everyone knows, I did meet with her yesterday, and protocol is that you meet with the elder before. I did have some conversations and emails beforehand, but it's important. So I did give her some tobacco yesterday, and I'm giving her some tobacco now. And that's just protocol when you're working with elders and knowledge keepers. So thank you very much, grandmother, for co-presenting with me today. I'm going to share my screen, and so yeah, what I want people to do here today is kind of think. Part of our journey here today is going to think outside of our own ways of settler and where we come from, and the way we move forward on reconciliation is actually to shift our perspective of what we do and how we do it. And so I want you to kind of, as we're going through this, think about things in a different way. As Rick talked about the treaty territory here, we are on areas that were originally originally were lands of many people: Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, lots of trading. And you can kind of see where the numbers are here is where some of the nations ended up agreeing to where they were settled. But at one point, it was a lot more fluid than that. There was lots of trading up to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. And it's important to realize that Indigenous people were here for thousands of years. And it was about, and where I'm coming from here is that it was about 7 generations ago that that the Indigenous people started taking on, that the treaties were signed, and that we started a relationship with them. Some of it, wasn't equitable, or a lot of it wasn't. But that's when, my family actually, on both sides of my family, on my Irish side, they immigrated and they tried homesteading in Lacombe, which is kind of halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. And then my Lebanese family, they tried homesteading just east of us in Saskatchewan area, and tried it there. And so I know that they were around Indigenous people and learning from them at the time. Rotary, as many of you know, Rotary's been around for almost the same. I mean, Rotary started in 1905, so Rotary has been around for about 7 generations. And one of the lessons I learned from one of my Muslim friends and through some other elders in the community from different cultures is this concept of learn, earn, and return. And I really took that on as a mantra. However, when I started working with the Indigenous community, I had to reframe it. Instead of just linear of, okay, I learn and return and then we die, I've kind of looked at it in a more holistic lens, with help from my elders like Doreen, to say, okay, it is about, in our relationship with Indigenous people and our relationship here as settlers or people that come from settlers, it is about learning and also unlearning, because there are many things that I learned that weren't right, or that I never learned because it was never taught to me in the schools. And then it's about earning, but it's about earning respect and about earning trust. And then it's about returning, and that's what I'm doing here with you today. I'm returning that knowledge, but I'm also always going to learn. And so again, I try to look at things through cycles and through an Indigenous lens as much as possible, because it's a much different lens than the Judeo-Christian colonist lens that I grew up in as growing up and educated in the Western system, of being a police officer. I grew up not with this lens, but I have found this is really, it's helped me do better in all the things that I do. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, 7 generations, not just 7 generations back, but I want to talk about the 7 generation principle. So what I wanted to do was to show you a quick video, and then I want to ask Doreen, Elder Doreen, to talk a little bit from her perspective, because this is from another Indigenous person's perspective.
Welcome to Hollywood. It's timely, actually, that we're considering things like sustainability and resiliency as we prepare for the generations that are coming after us. There's a teaching that's found within many Indigenous cultures that talks about the 7 generations, the need to consider our impacts on each other, on our environment, and for those faces who have yet to come. So when you see the 7 generations represented in a pictograph or within an illustration, you'll see that these 7 figures are connected. You'll see that there's a thread that binds all of them. And this again reinforces and really causes us to consider our relation, our interconnection, and our dependency on each other, from those that have come before us and for those that will come after us. The teaching places us within a continuum whereby each one of us has parents. And for many of us, we've been lucky to spend time with them, to learn from them, and to teach them. We've also therefore had grandparents. Many of us are lucky that we've had time to spend with them, to learn from them, and to teach them. And though many of us don't remember it, perhaps neither do they, we have had time with our great-grandparents. We've had time to learn from them, to teach them, and really absorb some of their journeys with them. Prepare for the generations that are coming after us. There's a teaching that's found within many Indigenous cultures that talks about the 7 generations, the need to consider our impacts on each other, on our environment, and for those faces who have yet to come. So when you see the 7 generations represented in a pictograph or within an illustration, you'll see that these 7 figures are connected. You'll see that there's a thread that binds all of them. And this again reinforces and really causes us to consider our relation, our interconnection, and our dependency on each other from those that have come before us and for those that will come after us. The teaching places us within a continuum whereby each one of us has parents, and for many of us, we've been lucky to spend time with them, to learn from them and to teach them. We've also therefore had grandparents. Many of us are lucky that we've had time to spend with them, to learn from them and to teach them. And though many of us don't remember it, and perhaps neither do they, we have had time with our great-grandparents. We've had time to learn from them, to teach them, and really absorb some of their journeys within their time on Mother Earth. If we're lucky, we'll each have a child. We'll have time to learn from them and to teach them. If we're really lucky, we'll also be able to spend time with our grandchildren. We'll have time to learn from them, we'll have time to teach them. And if we're really lucky, we'll be able to spend time with our great-grandchildren. The point being, though, is that each one of us spends time in each one of those areas. We spend time as a great-grandparent, a grandparent, a parent, a child, a grandchild, and a great-grandchild. And so the foundational principle of the 7 generations, as I know it to be, is that our choices, our behaviors, and our mistakes reverberate that far throughout history. And so really we challenge ourselves, we challenge each other to make our decisions and our impacts within creation, within that timeline, to respect and care for those 7 generations.
So I wanted
Okay,
to.
this is going to sound a little nuts, but the fastest and easiest way to make passive online income on Amazon is to never sell physical products.
1 second.
I never have.
Sorry. Go ahead. So, grandmother, can you?
Yes, I would love to share a little bit about that, because for me, I was raised by my grandparents. So when I was a little infant, my grandparents wanted so badly to be able to leave a legacy behind. And so we're taught orally and very different ways of learning and being. I'll give you an example. I was about 5-6 years of age when I had forgotten that I was supposed to weed the garden. That was one of my chores. And I forgot. And Dad drove up on a horse one day and he looked down at me as I was playing in the mud. And he said to me, did you forget to do your chores? And I looked up at him and I said, I forgot to weed the garden. And so he said, see that grandfather tree over there? You go and learn, you hug that grandfather till you learn how to listen. And so I remember going over there and listening and feeling the energy from this tree. And I was there a very long time until they came in and called me in for dinner. And so for me, it was about learning the creation stories, your rightful place in the cycle of life, and then the ceremonies and that we have. However, when I came through, we were not allowed to practice our culture openly. We weren't allowed to speak our language or anything. So I didn't go to residential school, but I did attend Indian day school, and that was equally as brutal. But when I think upon my purpose and mission in life, it's to bring peace and harmony to humanity. So I've been taught not to look at people for the color of their skin, but the potential that they have, because we're all in this together. They always said, you will be working with the rainbow tribes when you get old, like us, you will be working with people of all colors, of all races. And that was the way that I was brought up, through that concept of the 7 generations. So it was experiential learning. I don't ever remember being told by my grandparents that I couldn't do something. I was always encouraged to hone my skills. But it was in the non-native community that I wasn't accepted, and was always told I didn't belong or not good enough. And so as I came through my journey, I have learned to forgive from the depth of my heart, and I've done a lot of healing on myself. And so currently, I'm at 85, almost 86. I'm still going flat out 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, trying to bring those stories to humanity, because I know that we're all in this together. And when we're coming from a place of unconditional love to serve humanity, that's all you can ask for. And I think each one of the Rotarians that I have met, they are a special breed. And I'm really honored to share a little bit of my story with you tonight. Hi, all my relations. Cam?
Thank you, grandmother. I'm going to reshare my screen, move forward a little bit. And so, yeah, the 7 generations principle, as Dr. Grandmother talked about, it is about the stewardship of the future. It's the environment. It's a moral responsibility, and it's collectively for those that don't have a voice. And those that don't have a voice, and that means in our future, those that don't have a voice, the grandchildren or the great-grandchildren or great-grandchildren that I don't know yet. And it's creating our legacy. And one of the terms that you might have heard at the end of grandmother's speech, and you might have heard me say it as well, is all my relations after the prayer. And it is about all of my relations that came before, all of my relations that came afterwards, but all my relations in regards to what's around us, the environment, the trees, the animals. And so I think it's important for us just to think about that as we go forward in the things we do for our reconciliation efforts. Real briefly, Rotary and International, it talks about that there's certain groups of people that have not been involved with Rotary, or that have not benefited from Rotary efforts and opportunities. And that's what we're trying to do here. All of us, I think, would like to see Indigenous people more be a part of the Rotary family, and or be partner with Rotary to support and thrive. Now, one of the things for reconciliation, and it's not just Rotary, but it's anybody who's doing service in a nonprofit, is to think, how can we do it? A lot of people may have looked at the TRC recommendations, or may not have, but I mean, it's a big volume of information, 94 calls to action. It also asks and tells people to also to look at the UN Declaration of Indigenous People, so UN DRIP for short. And so what I want to do is kind of walk through a little bit of what that means for Rotary and how we do it. One of it is that to learn how our systems have not benefited others, how they've been based on colonial systems. And that could be, the types of prayer that you have at the beginning of a session, or how you introduce people, the legacy of colonialism, that we really need to build relationship for Indigenous people. I see many people here. I saw people coming on. Many people here had been to our Honoring Indigenous People event a couple of weeks ago up in the Northeast Calgary. the HIP event, where it's important to build the relationships. But we also have to embed Indigenous approaches to the work. And I really appreciate Rick's starting with treaty acknowledgement. But there's other ways of doing it, using circle systems, using a talking feather or a talking stick or an eagle feather in your work. It's important as well that we identify specific roles and strategies. So it's not just saying we're going to do something, but actually identify some things. And I'm going to walk through some ideas or some concepts that maybe you can look in your work to start that. And last but not least, but examine how you can amplify or lend support to pressing issues in community. Because the community, there's been lots of research and things identified of pressing issues for Indigenous communities on reserve, off reserve, in the city, in your towns. There's many people working on it, many Indigenous people. So we don't want to go off on our own, but we want to work with community and do things with their consent. So one of the concepts my background is, and my master's is intercultural communication. So I want to bridge the two cultures. I want to bridge Rotary culture, Rotary thinking with some Indigenous thinking. And so everyone here probably knows about the 7 focus areas, has heard about them, or is very involved with the 7 areas of focus. But I want to break that down, what would that mean doing things to support Indigenous work? I'll start off, basic education and literacy. We know literacy rates are low, and including graduation of post-secondary rates are lower than the Canadian average. Only 53% of Indigenous people have post-secondary compared to 65% of the average Canadian demographic. Going back to what the TRC is asking, it's saying that we as Canadians, we need to eliminate those educational employment gaps. And we need to look at age-appropriate curriculum on residential schools and Indigenous history. That also goes for us as Rotarians and us as employees or employers. We need to do that. And so here are things that we can do, or we can think about how do we do it? How can we invest our time, talent, and treasure as Rotarians to eliminate those educational employment gaps? Now, maternal and child health care. Indigenous births have higher adverse outcomes, and children have higher risks of chronic diseases, mental illness, addictions, and death, and suicide. And so again, the TRC recommendation, we've got to close that. We've got to, we want no deaths, no injuries, but anyone, but we don't want our Indigenous neighbors, brothers and sisters to have less of an opportunity of health, our women and our children to have that. And what the TRC says is we need to look at improved funding for healing centers and professionals. And again, I'm not going to say how Rotary can do that, but I just want you to start thinking about these are some of the things that are documented that we could work on. Any one of us individually or our clubs could meet with the community to find out what the issue are and work on one of these things. Disease prevention. Indigenous people are nearly twice as likely to have diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. And their health is linked to other income and other social factors. Again, the TRC says, close that gap. They should just like every other Canadian, they should have the same opportunity and health outcomes as every other Canadian born on this rock, on Turtle Island. Now, peace and conflict. 44% of Indigenous people report discrimination, and they're overrepresented in the justice system. The UN Declaration of Indigenous People say that Indigenous people are and should be free of any forms of discrimination. They have the right to equal education, access to resources, And anything that we do should be done in consultation with them. Community economic development. 20% of Indigenous people are in the low income bracket. Poverty, inadequate housing, labor market participation are all linked to health determinants. You look in the Homeless Foundation, their stats, that the homeless population, underhoused population, there's a high percent of Indigenous people that take their services. So again, looking at the UN Declaration, Indigenous people have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including education, employment, vocational training, etc. Water and sanitation. On reserve, First Nations community are 90 times more likely to be without running water. And those communities are 26 times higher than national average to have waterborne infections. Again, the UN Declaration says that Indigenous people have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationships with their traditional owned and otherwise occupied and used waters. Last but not least, a lot of you know that support for the environment is the latest of the seven focus areas. And what's interesting is there's research that has shown that Indigenous people and communities are the lowest contributors to greenhouse emissions. However, they're often the most exposed to the impacts of climate change. And the UN Declaration says Indigenous people have a vital role in the environment management, development because of their knowledge and traditional practices. I know that firsthand working with Doreen and her knowledge of the trees, the rocks, the flora, the fauna, the animals has just helped me in my understanding and my treatment of the environment. And so there's lots that we can learn from the wisdom that they've brought forward and are willing to share with us. I wanted to talk real briefly before we go to questions about the Indigenous relations logo we had developed. And so we had developed by Ina Fairbanks, a Blackfoot young lady from Kainai, who brought together this logo for our district. And you'll see that it not only has the four colors and the directions of many Indigenous depictions, but it has hands in the middle, and it also has, if you look closely, it's got the four-way test. And so I wanted to go over that real briefly, and just so when you're thinking about later about the four-way test, or you see this logo, I want you to think about this, our work as a Rotarians through an Indigenous lens. So is it the truth? So if you remember, there was the yellow, and that's the east is the place of sunrise and new beginnings. The totem animal is eagle, and it has great eyesight and vision and seeks the truth. Is it fair to all concerned? And so the south direction is full of warmth of the sun at high noon, where the sun's energy and the life of the people are the fullest. The totem animal, one of the totem animals for that area is the mouse, and who intuitively knows that things are fair. This is a place of building healthy relationships with families and communities. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? The West. It is the place of spiritual striving and ongoing within and seeking after truth. The totem animal for this area is the bear, which uses introspection and its senses to build relationships and goodwill. And last but not least, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Which is white. The north color is often symbolizes snow and wisdom of the elders. The totem animal is the buffalo, which provides freely all it possesses to the benefit of the entire community. And I'd like you all, just in your own way, I know the mic's not on, but if we could all do this together. If we could do the Rotary pledge as we're looking at this logo. Is it beneficial for all? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all? And will it build goodwill and better friendships? So I know lots of people have questions, and I want to give time for that, because our elder here, not only has she had lots of life experience and working and helping people, but as well as she spent time going to the United Nations, advocating for the UN Declaration of Indigenous People. And so she's a leader in our country and internationally. And so what I'm hoping, if people have any questions of what they've heard and they want any explanations from an Indigenous point of view, and or from myself as a navigator, I'll leave that open now, because this is your time to ask questions of Doreen or I.
Thanks, Cam. I just checked. There's no questions currently in the Q&A, but if people want to either put a question or just unmute themselves, they should be able to, and they can just table the question. We just got to kind of manage it here as best we can.
Have I got time to share a couple comments on your presentation about the circle, Cam?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to talk about the 4 directions that you alluded to, and the east, with the eagle being the sacred medicine helper. The eagle, being the highest flying bird, is closest to Creator. So it's kind of like a messenger for us. The eagle is farsighted and can see, the old people said, 7 miles down, it can spot a little mouse. So that's the teachings and the medicine that the eagle shares with us. You also mentioned the little sister, the mouse. She cannot see very far, but she can feel, and she feels every vibration upon the planet. That's her strong medicine that she shares. You can see the balance between the eagle and the little mouse. You can see there's a balance there if you're aware of the medicines. And then in the west direction with Grandmother Bear, she goes deep within the cave and she sleeps throughout the winter months. She hibernates. It teaches us that we must go deep within ourselves and do some introspective work and know exactly what our mission and our purpose in life is, to be able to contribute to humanity in a good way. And then in the north direction, the buffalo. In the wintertime, when the very strong winds are blowing from the north direction, the male buffalo will surround the females and the calves, and they'll face the winds head on, those north winds. So Grandfather Buffalo teaches us so much about ourselves, where we and our responsibility to life, and to be able to face things head on, because after a great winter time will come a great summertime, and there'll be, through any darkness in life, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. These teachers are something that I was brought up with through the oral tradition, and I think, to me, it's something that all humanity would benefit from. Because of my work, I spent over 2 decades at the UN in Geneva as a presiding elder. And from that, I learned that all Indigenous people around the globe, doesn't matter where we come from, we all have synonymous, our teachings are the same pretty well. We can connect with each other, even though we don't speak the same language, we understand each other. And I'm sure with technology that we have nowadays, it's so important to form a healthier, more mindful society. And to me, this is where the importance of forming wahkuhtuwin, we call it, relationships. And we're working on those relationships one step at a time. We'll definitely be able to have a more conscious, more mindful society. And above all, I think a healthier society. And I say that as an old nurse. Hi, all my relations.
Great, thanks. There's a couple of questions I was reading in here. So, and again, maybe I'll answer the first one, and or Grandma, you could also. Would it be better to work as one group or individual clubs? And I think it could be either or, depending on the size of the project. I know grandmother, she's worked with Rotary clubs for many years. When she was with PICS, there was a club that supported her work at the Plains Indian Cultural Center. I know, Tom Jackson, there was a group of clubs, and then there was just an individual, and then there were sometimes individual clubs helped out with that. I think it's depending on the need and the relationship you build with the community. And as you know, Marnie was out at this event the other day. I mean, if you build a good relationship with one organization, let's move ahead and then see if where you go with that. I think we don't want to bite off too much, but I know Franco and there's a group of us met last week to say, what can we do as a group of communities possibly? But we wanted to start off maybe first with just building some relationships and having reaching out. So what I would recommend, and what we were going to do as Rotary in the Calgary area, was have some clubs reach out and make some individual relations, maybe start on some smaller projects, and then if we need to, we can grow from that to have some wins. I'll ask the next question, Grandmother. It says here for you. Could you give your perspective on the progress being made on the truth and reconciliation?
Could I give my perspective? I think we're making some progress. I can speak, I think, to the work that I've been doing with the various universities. It's not just the local 3 universities, but I've worked with McMaster, Harvard, and some of these leading universities. We're now being able to start implementing some of the curriculum where we have elders engagement within the organizations, these institutions, and it makes a big difference. I can speak to the work that I do up at the University of Calgary, Cummings School of Medicine. I did a ceremony this year, the stethoscope ceremony, and the leading doctor, Dr. Todd Anderson, came to me and he said, Grandmother, this is the first time in history that he said we were able to do such a moving ceremony with everybody, all of their medical students. They had over 200 med students, and I got up and I spoke about the similarities between the stethoscope, how they wear the stethoscope and they have to listen to somebody else's heart, their patient's heart or chest or whatever. And I said, as a young child, you're taught at a very young age to make sure you use these 2 years that Creator gave you. Make doubly sure that you hear the message appropriately. Make sure you use your two eyes to view the situation as it is before you use this. And this, whatever comes out of your mouth, can be either healing or harmful. And so those are some of the teachings that I was brought up with as a little girl. And I do see the changes that 5-10 years ago, we wouldn't have seen that. Even to bring UNDRIP to the forefront and use UNDRIP as our framework, moving forward together with the TRC, I think that's really starting. We've done some good work, but we still have a long ways to go. Hi, all my relations.
Hi. Thanks, grandmother. A question from Janice Giroux. Just wondering, what is the most urgent thing to work on? I think you heard those 7 areas I talked about, and she's just thinking that it seems to be water, because water is life. What's your thoughts on out of those 7 areas, what would be the most urgent to work on for the community?
To me, I believe water is sacred to us. It's very holy. We can live without food and that, but water to us is a living entity. And we have a very sacred responsibility to try to protect our waters in the lakes, rivers, and streams. And nowadays on my reserve, they deliver water in a big truck to where people can go and get their water. So I think, to me, water is one of the most critical issues that we're facing right now. It's imperative that every child matters, every person matters, every elder matters. Doesn't matter of their skin color. And so to me, water is sacred. It's taboo, it's holy. And we need to really think how essential and how critical that is. I see a lot of work done in Africa. When I was there, they were building water resources for the locals over there. But I come home and we weren't doing that here. So there is a great need in that area. Hi, all my relations.
Thanks, grandmother. Alan Friesen has a question. First, he has a statement. Grandmother, you bring peace and harmony to humanity. How does Napaquin bring peace and harmony? He asks, how does Napaquin bring peace and harmony? Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you're muted.
How does what bring peace and harmony?
I don't know the word. Napaquin.
I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I just know that we as individuals, one person can make a big change in life. And I say that because I sat on the International Circle of Elders for a long time. And what the elders said is one person can make a difference. And that's with peace and harmony, to bring peace and harmony to humanity. And we do that by these relationships, working with each other, one another, because we all share these values of love, peace, harmony. We all aspire to that, but we have to emulate these values by coming together more often and looking at what can we do together to make things easier for the next generation.
Yeah, that leads to a similar question that Earl has here. What can I as an individual do to help bring justice to Indigenous people? And what can a Rotary Club do? Do you have any suggestions or recommendations?
I think just reaching out and getting to know them, to me, that's something that I found is very helpful in the work that I've been doing, you know, just meeting new people and getting to know them. Because when we, like that event we had a couple weeks ago, I got to meet a lot of Rotarians, and I saw the common good that we all share as people, you know, and I think that's what it takes to have those amazing opportunities to meet like that as individuals and share our common needs within the communities, but also what can we do together to make a difference.
Yeah, and I wanted to share a story in regards to that. You know, I remember I've known grandmother for 15 years now, and I remember we'd be in some meetings together. I remember we had some really tough conversations, but I at the time I didn't know what they were, but they were brave conversations, and sometimes we didn't disagree, but I learned a lot because it challenged my assumptions. And it made me a better person. And I'd come back and instead of cowering when grandmother would say something or challenge me, I'd listen and say, okay, where did that come from? What did I say? What did I do? And it was a great learning opportunity. I had to be brave. I had to be brave of what I said. I had to be brave of how I took it. And I think that's where we have to come as people coming from settler Black backgrounds is to have those brave conversations, and not sit in the corner, but ask what's on your mind, ask the tough questions like we're asking here, like people are asking, and don't be afraid, because there's no you know, we're all here as learning as humans, and so I think it's really important that we as individuals and clubs walk down this path that's going to challenge us, going to challenge what we learned in our previous, and we'll have to unlearn some of those things that we held as our truths once we open that Pandora's box.
I'd just like to answer this one question here. It says, do you have examples where clubs have established relationships with First Nations communities that can become the springboard for co-developing initiatives? Well, when I ran PICS, I was the Plains Indians Cultural Survival School. I was chief cook and bottle washer for 18 years. And during that time, I reached out to the Rotary Club. We had a lot of students that were funded for up to 19 years of age. From 19 up onwards, there was a lot of our people didn't even have high school completion. So I got them to sponsor that program, and it just really worked out well because we formed relationships, and you know, I'd invite them to the annual graduation and powwow exercises. We have a lot of community events that would take place, and those opportunities to come in and just be in a sociable setting where you could just enjoy the evening watching our students accelerate. That to me was a big plus. You know, when I think of it, it was something that benefited a lot of students.
Great, thank you. Thanks, grandmother. And I wanted to just leave with a challenge for everyone here, is to think about what we're doing to create our legacies, to think about our 7 generations, the 3 or 4 more that go beyond us. How are we going to respond to them, to say, what did we do? What did you do to to make things better for Indigenous people. What is our legacy? What is my legacy? What is Rotary's legacy? So I want you to think about the four-way test in a different way and create our own legacies as Rotarians as we go forward. All my relations.
Thank you, Cam. Appreciate the message that you shared with us this evening. Thank you, Elder Doreen. I think this is the third or fourth time we've met, albeit virtually, and I look forward to the day where we can actually meet face to face and share. I always learn something from when I talk to an elder or a knowledge keeper, and no exception with yourself. So thank you very much for giving of your time and sharing your experience, your life, your stories with everyone here this evening. So thank you. For those that are on here still, and I think majority of them have been on, again, want to thank you for giving an hour of your time to listen to some great messages. Look for a PDF of Cam's PowerPoint slide presentation in your email inbox later this week. Our next webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, January the 17th, where we'll hear from our District Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So good evening, thanks again, and stay safe and happy holidays.